Good day to you. I'm Dr. Dennis L. Waters Sr. I bless you. Thank you for being here with us. And I say us, we serve an omnipresent God, and I'm just so thankful really to be here, to have this opportunity to speak to you in behalf of this omnipresent God. It's just a wonderful thing, really. And I want to share with you, there's just something that's on my heart. I am an observer of life, a participant in life, and I recognize that God is moving. God is working in, through, and as us. I'm a student of the divine. I watch, I look, I'm amazed at God, whether it is something that has to do with the growing of plants. I study plants, I look at various things. You may hear me talk about the mullein plant, that's spelled Mullein, I believe, and I found that to be an amazing plant. That is a plant that can be used for healing. There are all kinds of teas that you can make. It is one of the most diverse plants in its use. There's also a plant that's called turmeric. When you combine the two, you will find that they are amazing in what they can do. There's also ginger. Those plants, when you put all of them together, you can find that they have an amazing healing effect when it comes to what they can do for a person's body. And then I've of recent had the aspect of making a tea that had to do with putting together ginger, turmeric, and lemon. Ginger, turmeric, and lemon. And that was for the work that I needed to have done as far as my lungs are concerned. I wanted to clear up a bit of congestion that I felt was taking place within my lungs. And so I'm just mentioning that because I would go online, and based on something that I might feel inside of my body, I wanted to address it in a natural way. And part of that has to do with the aspect that when I was growing up, my parents and others in my community used what they call sassafras tea. You may not know anything about that, but that's what they did, and that's what they gave us, along with other teas that we use for healing. We did not often go to what would people would call a doctor, a medical doctor, but that's what we would use. And those kinds of things are still with me to this day. And I mention all of that because, in a certain kind of way, I'm multidimensional, and that is vital that you have an understanding of that when you are listening to me. One of my favorite people, when it comes to who I am and what I do, is someone that I was introduced to when I was in high school, I believe it was. It is an individual who is with me even to this day. I read his books, I read his essays, I am inspired by him. That individual is a person named Ralph Waldo Emerson. He was writing in the 1800s, and his writings still, as I said, inspire me to this very day. And I have of late read some things that have been written about him. And this is one of the things that I wanted to bring to you today because there is a type of affinity with him in regard to what I do and what I say, even in regard to that. Previously, I read the item that had to do with his essay on circles. And what he was saying in regard to circles is that the circle has a center that is stable. It is stable. And then the center of the circle expands. It's like when you throw a rock into water, the center of the circle then it goes outward, and that can be seen as a person who has an influence, if you will. Like if you see your influence at the beginning, you stabilize who you are, your values, your beliefs, and then that goes outward from your center outward to your community, so to speak, outward from yourself, and then it goes to those who are nearest to you, and then those who are farther out, and then those who are still farther out. But the important thing is to make sure that you have your values, your beliefs, your ethics, all of those things, the principles that you live by, your habits. There was the making of the book called Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. That idea is still in the present time. People used to say a fish rots from the head down, and that people pay individuals today, they pay the CEO, who is the individual who is most responsible for the direction that a company takes. That CEO is one of the most valuable people, or that C-suite in an organization. They are the most valuable people. Why? Because they are the center. They're the vibration of that entire organization. They are the ones that really are setting the course for the ship of that organization. The enterprise actually goes forward. So this is what I'm talking about in regard to the center. It's not a physical center. It is just simply the organizational center as to its planning process. And then every part is impacted by that center. And so, like Emerson, there's a book that I got, and you can go to Emerson, you can go to any kind of like old used bookstore, and you can find books that have to do with the Ralph Waldo Emerson. But I found one, and I bought it at the type of store that I just mentioned. And in the forward for that book, it says, like Bottom, Emerson once confessed he wanted to play all parts. He wanted to play all parts. When he read Scott, he wanted to be a novelist. If he saw a verse or two, even in a newspaper, he would be a poet. In his daydreams, he yearned to be a painter. After reading Herschel on the study of the physical science, he wanted to buy a telescope and a laboratory and to be a natural scientist. If he heard boys reciting their mathematics, he wanted to be a mathematician. There's almost no walk of the muse, he wrote, and more also, no way of life, but a sometime or other I have caught the romance of it. Farmer, stageman, merchant, editor, but far, far above all the herb and berry woman. Except for Whitman, perhaps no American in the 19th century was so responsive to all experience, all occupation, all interests and powers of the body, soul, and mind. And so there are parts of all that is life that at some point I have thought about entering into. I've worked in my life. One of the first jobs that I ever had coming out of high school was that person in my community who was an entrepreneur, a man named Mr. Sherman Best. Not sure if Sherman is still alive, but a man named Mr. Sherman Best wanted me to work with him in regard to building houses. I can remember carrying a piece of what they call plasterboard at that time, which was a step up from actually plastering houses. It is what is called sheetrock now. I worked with him in regard to building houses for a little short time, not very long at all. I later worked as an electrician apprentice, that whole piece in regard to that. And then I became a salesman, a community relations person, really, and then also later became a person who did business sales, communications sales with inside of an office that was doing business consultation in the telecommunications industry. And so all of those things I've done in my life, and of course, being a student, a minister, all of those kinds of things, a consultant today. And so all of those things I've done. I've been an eternal, it seems, a student, what they call lifelong learning today. Always taking courses. And so it's an amazing journey to be a continuous learner in this day and time, in the 21st century, the year 2022, and onward by the grace of God. That is what Emerson was in the 1800s, the 19th century. as the birthing of America was still taking place and still is even today. And so that kind of thing, and that's what I encourage others to do. The circle is still from the center, is still going out. And when Emerson thought of this that we call the divine, he spoke of it as having a center, is center. And then God was also on the circumference, which is the wider part of the circle, the whole wider part of it. And says God was God in the center, and God is God in the circumference and every part in between. You know that the circle itself has 360 degrees, as we call 360 degrees. That's the entire circle. And then there's what they call the circumference, and then there's the diameter, the radius, all of those calculations as it relates to a circle. And so you begin to look at that, the area of a circle, and all of those things are calculated. And God inhabits all of that when it comes to, and it's not talking about a physical circle necessarily. It's talking about all that a person is, all that the universe is. God inhabits all of that. That's what we mean when we say omnipresence and omnipotence and omniscience. All of that God is, and all of that. God is in us, through us, as us. And so it is the exploration of that, or the becoming of all that God has intended that each individual is, that we talk about in regard to that. And so that's what we mean by continuous learning. And as a result of that, life has unfolded, and it's kind of like a roller coaster ride in some kind of way, for me at least. That it starts out one way and then there's a surprise down the road. And that's what we call the hero's journey in regard to that. There seems to be that it's not a straight linear road, that there are trials and tests and challenges that are each step along the road. And so, as it takes place in regard to going to school, there are things, whether no matter where I have been, where there are challenges, and they're like little battles that individuals have presented in regard to my life. And so I look at those things, and it takes me a long time to understand that it's not actually the individuals who are involved, it's my approach to the situation. And why am I speaking of those kinds of things in life? Because I think that it is a way to handle life. And where did you get that from? There is, for my life, a major part of my life has been involved in the study of a book called the Bible, the Judeo-Christian Bible. Primarily, what was delivered to me was called the King James Bible. But no matter how you look at it, there's been so much that has been written about the King James Bible. Inside of my home, there were the Bible, which was a book, and then there was also a book about the Bible. It was written by, it was actually dealing with a movie. The movie was called Ben-Hur. You may be familiar with it, but Ben-Hur was a book initially. It had to do with a man. I believe the book itself was written by a man named Lew Wallace. And Lew Wallace, if I understood correctly, the history of it, that individual had actually been an agnostic, and that someone had actually challenged him to prove that the Bible was not true, or that its message was not true, or that Jesus the Christ was not true. And he set about to prove that the message of Jesus the Christ was not true. And so, as he began to search and to go through the process to prove that the message of the Bible was not true, he ended up encountering the Christ. He ended up encountering the Christ as the Christ is revealed in the person of Jesus, who becomes the Christ, or is revealed as the Christ. And that's where we have the story that is called Ben-Hur. And that's what takes place. And so I never had seen the movie as a young person, but I did have a book about the Bible, about Ben-Hur. I had a book about the making of the movie called Ben-Hur. And so at a very early age, before I knew there was a Joseph Campbell, before I knew there was a book called The Hero's Journey, or The Hero with a Thousand Faces, which was Joseph Campbell's book, I had this book on the making of a movie called Ben-Hur. And etched in my mind were the different scenes that were in that movie. And the players in that movie, the man that played that character was a man named Charleston Heston, and almost an eternal character to me. And there was Ben-Hur. His protagonist was um, a character whose name was in the movie, at least Marcellus, I believe it was, Marcellus, something to that effect. And there was a chariot race, all of those kinds of things. And so I saw that movie without it being on the screen, so to speak, and all of those, again, those kinds of things. And so I watched it in my mind. So you have the Bible, you have this thing, and understood that it was a challenge for Ben-Hur to become who he was. What was the challenge? Well, in the movie itself, what takes place is that there's a call, there's a specialness about Ben-Hur. He is born in a very wealthy family, so to speak, as it looks like, as far as his Jewish heritage. And then he is a person who is to take care of his family. And then he has privilege when it comes to many other people. And then he goes through a process where he has to protect his family. As a result of having to protect his family, one day there's something that happens, an accident actually, and one of his members of his family, I believe it's his sister, is threatened to go to jail or to be in prison. And he steps in for her. And then, as a result of that, he then goes to jail and ends up in jail. And then ultimately for him, he ends up as a slave who is in a ship. The ship itself is owned by a person who is a person of means. And one day that ship is out at sea or on a voyage, and it is, I think it is rated something to that effect. And there is a time in which the vessel, the captain of the vessel, is nearly killed, and Ben-Hur is the person that saves that person's life. And then as a result of that, because he saves the person's life, that person is indebted. That person whose life is saved is a Roman citizen. He's a wealthy Roman citizen. And eventually, Ben-Hur brings that person who had been his master. There's a moment when he says basically that I am now your master, but he turns it over and he treats the man as a human. He treats the man in the way that humans should be treated. And that man then eventually comes to understand that he has been up and now he's down, and then he is given the right to be up again. Why? Because he's a human. Is that relevant today? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because sometimes people who have power, they lose power. And then those who now have power begin to treat those people who treated them bad, they begin to treat those people bad. And it doesn't really work. Whether it is for a period of a day or a moment or for thousands of years or whatever, there's the up and down, the up and down, the up and down, and up and down. I tell people everybody has been up at some period of time. Every race has been up at some period of time. But that's not what is displayed in the movie Ben-Hur. That's not what is displayed in the movie Ben-Hur. And as Dr. King said, if you fight fire with fire, you both get burned. You both get burned. Eventually, you both get burned. And so that's the biblical statement that says, forgive your enemies. Whether they try to be your enemies or not, you forgive your enemies. And so that's what's in the book, Ben-Hur. That's what's in the movie, Ben-Hur. All of those kinds of things. Let me just stop right there and play a little bit more of this music. It does some things for us. Listen a bit. turn it off and talk with you a little bit more, I want to tell you that the email address we encourage individuals to email us at is admin, ADMIN, at real, REL, dash coach, COACH. We're seeking to redesign our website. And also, the website, of course, is real, REL, dash coach, COCH.com. We are mentioning this entire thing about Emerson, really because there are multiple interests that I have, and those interests include a number of websites as well. We want to bring back on our website, I Will Restore. We had previously a website, iwillrestore.com. It is part of our nonprofit organization, I Will Restore Ministries, and we want to bring that back online as I work with that. I have done the majority of work that has to do with our websites, and I need to move beyond that particular thing of maintaining the websites myself. I apologize to many individuals for having done that, and the whole aspect that's involved with that. As a matter of fact, we have to recruit individuals and bring individuals on to work with us. The I Will Restore website, we had an entire course that was associated with that. That course was becoming one's authentic self, or becoming one's God self, or one's Christ self, or one's Buddha self, whatever you want to call it. Abraham Maslow called it self-actualization, called Jung called it individuation. It's finding your place in the puzzle, if you will, of humanity. This whole aspect that we are all on this planet, or in this time, or in this universe, whatever you want to call it. And there's a name for it. I know that spirit is moving in you, else you would not be here at this particular time listening to this podcast. And we know that people are listening to the podcast all over the world. There are the statistics that tell the individuals are downloading the podcast. We thank you. We bless you for doing so. And so we're very, very grateful. And there's feedback that comes to us as to what is taking place. I want to tell you about some of our clients, by the way. We have one who's a realtor, and that individual has just shown us that that person is getting all kinds of awards and promotions and all kinds of things. Of course, income increase. We're so thankful in regard to that. Realtor Reed is just really, really, really just making waves, if you will. We are so thankful in regard to her and what's taking place in regard to that. Her husband, who was one of the first clients that we had in this space as far as coaching and consulting is concerned. He was both one of our coaching clients, one of our consulting clients, because basically, as a coach, as we call it, and a consultant, we were doing coaching and we were teaching online and everything in regard to that. And we were doing it from the standpoint of I will restore, if you will. And it was in fact called I Will Restore Coaching. And we were working with individuals. We were dealing with all kinds of things as a minister. We were both doing counseling, and then we were doing a type of coaching. And so we were working with individuals, working through past situations that they had in life, and they were experienced real victories in their life, dealing with situations that they had previously dealt with when came to like therapeutic situations that they were dealing with and had dealt with. They had gone to psychologists or psychiatrists for years. They had done that. And they came and worked with us. We used our tools and techniques. Those were amplified when I went to Walden University to study industrial organizational psychology. And I was doing that on a PhD level. And so, as I was reading, I understood the difference between therapy and coaching. Coaching is not the therapy. Coaching, a person has a goal. There's a specific reason that a person comes to coaching. And we were doing that. And then coaching, the person pays because the destination must be worth the drive. So it's not charity. You don't do charity in coaching, thank God. And so the person has to be motivated. The person has to be motivated to do the work that's involved with a person being coached. There's sometimes people come and they are not motivated. There's work. If you're going to lead $1 million company, a $5 million company, or in the case of some individuals today, they're leading billion-dollar companies. But this aspect that when the individual came to us, Mr. David Keith Sparrow came to us. That's one of my clients. He came, he had a business plan, 5-page business plan, but he was very clear on what he wanted to do. He wanted to maintain the legacy of his father. His father was a realtor, and he also wanted to pursue his dream. He had a dream of owning a barbershop, and he had a 5-page plan, business plan. That's vital because our 4 Ds said you have to have a desire, and then the second D said you had to write it down. And he had listened to me over the course of many years, had not said a word about his plan because he was not my client. He was not even my barber, but he had written his plan down and he gave it to me. He gave it to me. I probably got a copy somewhere and I got to make sure that I find it and that whole piece. But he had written it down and we began to work on that plan, begin to work on that plan. And to this day, he does both. He does both. It is major, major victory. And there are others in regard to that have done the same thing in regard to all of this. So we know, as they say, we have proof of concept. And we work with our 8 A's as a framework. We had them then, we have them now. We've seen all kinds of other things. Certainly, we work with the traditional biblical concepts as well as we talk with people. But I told you, went to Walden University, industrial organizational psychology. So we're doing psychology as a science when we work with individuals. It's not, we can do a study of return on investment. Is it worth it? Absolutely. Is the destination worth the drive? Absolutely. You can prove that in dollars and cents. You can prove it qualitatively. You can prove it quantitatively. As if it's not, then you shouldn't continue to do it. We say that very clearly. So we're not just talking to talk. We're talking so that people make behavioral changes in their lives. Behavior, I love that. We can say that your behavior will change, not just your mind will change, your behavior will change. And as your behavior changes, then your finances will change. Your action will change first and your finances will change. That's what we expect in regard to that. So we're not just talking, so to speak, so that you get up, so to speak, and shout and all that other kind of stuff. I don't think many ministers today are just talking so that their church members will just shout and shout and shout. No, I don't think that happens very much today. That from ministers that I see, in regard to that. And that could be so many ministers, whether it's a Creflo Dollar, whether it's definitely someone like T.D. Jakes. T.D. Jakes, a long time ago, discovered that his words have power. His words have power. And that he understands what he is doing, how he is doing it, and he's bringing it forth and making a tremendous difference in the lives of individuals. That includes also a man like Joel Osteen. So these individuals, no matter what you may see as far as the presentation that they give in the media or on television or in their, whatever it may be, the first level of that may look like one thing to you, but they have a tremendous situation when it comes to what they have as a teaching mechanism and a training mechanism. The same goes for my friend who is in the Agape International Spiritual Center. He was a person who was seen at the in the item called the Secret. And when I met him years ago, I went to there at the Agape International Spiritual Center. It was the kind of thing that, as I said, when it comes to Emerson, there's an attraction to Emerson for me because of the way that my mind works. And I went. My wife and I went to Agape International Spiritual Center, and there was just an appreciation for what he has set up. And I just became, by his presence, by his community that was built. I think he's about 35 years old at this time. I'm not really sure. But that entire community just convicted me that the Spirit had called me to do what I was doing and that I should continue to be me. And so, why am I saying that? Because you should continue to be you. And so, when I look at this, what I'm saying is we have our will restored. We also have Spirit Victory Praise Transformational Leadership Institute or University. And we say that because of the various laws that are in place and what we're doing. And we're getting ready to move to the level that we let it all show forth in the community. We're bringing people in regard to that. And we're getting ready to do something that we think is just wonderful, and that is, we're getting ready. I've had a relative that a few months ago passed, um, died, if you want to say that. Transition is what we say. And I want to honor him. I want to call his name right now. So if one of my relatives hears it, I've been talking with his widow, if you will. His name is Deshante. His initials are mine, also DLW, but his name is Deshante, and Deshante was tragically, in my estimation, killed. And I want to just say that if I'm saying something wrong, I apologize. And I've been talking to his widow and just basically agreed that I would work together with her to honor Deshante and help him to carry on a business that he started together with her. That business is called Longevity Apparel. And I'm going to work with them to carry it forward so that Deshante will be remembered for the creative person that he was and the creative spirit that he still leaves. And she wants to work with us and our company. We want to work together to remember him. He was a mere 28 years old, I believe, when he died. And he was just a wonderful, wonderful spirit. We had, previously in my home, he had come up to be with us in the Washington metropolitan area. Then he came back and brought his brothers and his wife. Um, and then I believe it was last year, I believe that he was killed. And what I want to do is to honor him by helping to bring forth his legacy, the longevity. So there are just a number of things that we do when it comes to coaching and consulting. That's Restore Executive Life and Leadership Coaching and Consulting. When it comes to a nonprofit organization, that's I Will Restore. When it comes to teaching individuals, actually having a school that empowers individuals on a number of levels, then that's called Spirit Victory Praise Transformation Leadership Institute University. And then now we're going to work with a family member and bring forth longevity apparels. Why are we doing all of that? Because I've been in different places throughout the world. There's still people who can be benefited by anything that we might do, even the example that we set. And that's who I am at my heart. It is God expressing in, through, and as me. That's what I've learned, to be a beneficial presence in the earth. And we're making a difference. We're seeing people like David Keith Sparrow and Chantel Reed Sparrow and what they have done, who they have become, and how they are bringing forth. And you can look for these individuals online. Miss Sparrow, Reed Sparrow, Chantel is really an international. She can work with you. You can look for her online, and we'll have a link to her at our website as well. that connects you with her all over the country, all over the world. She can help, and she's an excellent realtor. I'm not just saying that. You can Google her name, you can see her, and if you're listening, support her. Support her. She will treat you well, and everything. You download this, share it with others. Help them to understand that there's more to them, as they say, than between your head and your toe. There's so much more to you than what you have already revealed up to this point. I guarantee it. And we want you to send us an email at real-coach.com. Send the email. We promise that we will pour more into you than you could ever actually initially understand, or even if you arrive at the point where you are paying for whatever it is, or giving even, because there is the aspect when you come to a spiritual center, which we have, then that you are returning what we call tithes and offerings. You cannot beat God given. God said, prove me now herewith, said the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, there shall not be room enough to receive it. I am a witness to all of those things taking place when it comes to what we do. I'm a witness. I've seen individuals lifted from where they were to new heights of life. So I've seen it all taking place, and it's still being done to this day. God is omnipresent. I've seen healings, I've participated in them, all of those things. And life itself, the aspect, you change your mind. The texts that are in the Bible, it is done unto you as you believe. That's a true text. The question that has to be asked is to understand, what do you really believe? What are you totally convicted about? That's the aspect of it. God is true to his word. And belief, you can call it my cognitive state, my subconscious, whatever it may be, whatever you want to call it, psychology, whatever you want to call it. But it has to do with you as an individual, me as an individual, arriving to the point that I'm allowing myself to be convicted about what is truth, not just what is true. That's only momentary. It could be changing from moment to moment. But what is truth is something that's based on principle. People used to believe that a person could not fly, but that's changed. Truth is that man can do so many things that he used to believe were absolutely impossible. And how do you prove what is truth? You end up doing some kind of experiment or test, and to see how wide the circle can go. That's enough for today. God bless you. Give us you can give us a email, send us an email, admin@real-coach.com. We're going to keep talking about this because we want you to be a part, not just from the standpoint of sending us email so that we have emails, but so that your life can expand and you can be more, you can do more, you can have more. Blessings to you. Take care. Bye-bye. And by the way, we know that these podcasts can be listened to over the course of time. So you can start listening to it, then stop, then start.